Jai Prabhuji. Welcome to the Retroprogressive Yoga Institute, to our course about Prabhuji's book, What Is As It Is. I'm Swami Ramananda and I'm a disciple of Prabhuji. Today we will continue and read from the introduction of the book. As we learned in our previous meeting, this book is a collection of satsangs with Prabhuji that were transcribed and compiled into a book. And also the introduction is actually a satsang, a shorter satsang, that was chosen as an introduction because it gives some idea of what satsang is, what a meeting with a master is, and how we should approach it. In our previous meeting, we learned a little bit about Prabhuji and what is the right attitude of learning from him. And we also started reading and learned what satsang is. Satsang composed of the word sat, which is truth, but in Sanskrit it's also equivalent to existence. And sangha, which is association. Sadhu sangha is association with the saintly person, and sangha, we also learned a little bit about the sangha of the disciples of Lord Buddha. Today we will continue to read from where we stopped, and I will start now. A lesson or conference is a meeting on a verbal or mental level, an encounter on the level of words, of the intellect. It's the meeting between a teacher and student in which study takes place. From a meeting of minds, only knowledge can ensue, but wisdom can never blossom, as it can only arise from sangha. Prabhuji says here that our regular way of acquiring knowledge is through a mental interaction, through words. So it's an exchange of ideas, of concepts, and that's what composes our knowledge. But wisdom can only flourish through sangha or association with a wise being, someone that realized his true self. And in this meeting today, we're going to explore what knowledge is, what wisdom is, and what are the differences between the two. Prabhuji deepened into it in his book Advaita Vedanta, and also mentioned and explained many things related to it in his commentary to the book Ishavasya Upanishad. And in this meeting we will take references from both in order to expand our understanding and delve deeper into those important terms. When we study at school or university, the material is passed from the teacher mind to the mind of us, the students. The teacher repeat words. Our ears hear the sounds, translate them to words, and then our intellect is able to translate them into concepts, ideas, and then store them into our memory. If we repeated enough times the information, we will be able to store it in our long-term memory and then pull it when we need to get an exam or even teach it to someone else. And the educational system encourages very much memorizing information. And sometimes it comes on top of understanding, contemplating, and applying the information into our lives. And today, the science developed so much that we are even able to create an artificial intelligence, machines like ChatGPT, where you can feed the machine information like we are fed with information by the teachers. but the machine can process it much faster than us, can generate text much faster than humans can, or at least most humans. And then it leaves us with the question, what is the difference? If what we learn is just information, what is the difference between us and those machines? And I hope this meeting will be able to answer some of those questions. Let us pause here for a moment and question the field of knowledge. How do we know what we know? And how do we know that what we believe to know is actually valid or truth? Do we base our main means of knowledge on the senses? Or maybe it's our logic that we trust? How much of what we know from others? And how do we know from where those others received this information? And from where the ones that they received the information from, where this information come from? Can we trust it or not? And are there limits to what we can know? Are there things that we will never know with our means of knowledge? And is there anything that I know without learning? And from where my storage of knowledge started. As a newborn, I didn't know nothing. I only knew perceptions and sensations. I saw different shapes and colors. I heard different sounds. I didn't have any interpretation for those perceptions. And I had different sensations like hunger or thirst, but I didn't conceptualize it in any way. Then came my parents and pointed out different objects and gave them a name. Whether it's themselves or me or others, different organs of the body, different objects that I saw. And in my mind, I started to connect between things, between different objects that had some similarities, between different colors, different sounds. And from there, gradually grew my storage of knowledge. But how do I know that what I know is actually valid? And for valid knowledge, we need valid means to acquire this knowledge. The philosophy dealing with those questions is called epistemology. And great Western philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, René Descartes, David Hume, Immanuel Kant were all dealing with those questions. We shouldn't take them as simple questions because there were so many debates about the question of knowledge. And also the Vedic seers of antiquity. Also they established their own science of epistemology, which calls the Pramanas. Pramanas means valid means of knowledge. And they also dealt exactly with the same questions. What are our means of knowledge and what makes them valid, or what are they valid for? And Prabhuji deepened into the Vedic Pramanas in his book Advaita Vedanta, chapter 16, and I highly recommend you to go and read this chapter in order to have even a greater understanding of our means of knowledge. Philosophy is commonly translated as love for wisdom, and we can see this inquiry into the subject of knowledge as our steps from being knowledgeable to being wise. And what are those means? Every moment we receive a lot of information through our senses. We hear, we see, we smell, we feel through our skin, different perceptions, and we bring them in. It's even much more than what we can comprehend. And today we actually know how limited our senses are. We know that there are sound frequencies that we humans cannot hear. There are trillions of subatomic particles that are passing through our body every second, but we do not feel them. And our vision is limited too. We can see that we can cover with a coin the sun, even that the sun is much bigger than planet Earth. And we can see that a very significant means to acquire knowledge are our senses, but they're very limited and can deceive us in some cases. But still, it is considered to be a valid knowledge. In the Vedic pramanas, it's called pratyaksha pramana. Whatever we perceive through our senses. Another way to acquire knowledge is through logic. And we use our logic all the time when we don't have a certain direct perception of something. We can infer different things. We can postulate, we can assume different things. For example, the most classical example is the fire and the smoke. We see a fire behind a far hill, and we assume that there is smoke there. And it's considered valid because there is a strong connection between the smoke and the fire. In Sanskrit, this pramana is called anumana pramana. And many Western philosophers were very strong about our logic as the main or the most significant means of knowledge for humans. A major portion of our knowledge comes from others, starting from our parents, then continue to our teachers and professors, books, and today the internet. We are exposed to so much information through the internet, and sometimes the information is contradictory. So how do we know? How do we know, and can we trust the testimony of others? We even use the testimony of others in court. Someone that had a direct perception through their senses of a certain sin. We were not there, but they come and describe it, and we need to trust that what they share is actually happened. The pramana, which is related to the testimony or reliable testimony, is called Shabda Pramana. And this pramana has a special place in the Vedic pramanas because according to the teachings of the saints of Hinduism, Shabda Pramana is also the scriptures and the spiritual masters, which gives us a door to the ultimate reality or what we cannot perceive through our other means. But we will get to it a little later today. All those means of knowledge has their imperfections, but this is what we have in order to learn our body, our mind, and the world around us. But is this everything that we can know? Everything that there is in life? Jnana is the Sanskrit term which means knowledge. But this is not information. And Prabhuji explained it beautifully in his book Advaita Vedanta. Jnana is to know oneself as Brahman and to realize one's own reality as transcendental being beyond time and space. The Sanskrit word ajnana, which means ignorance, is composed of the suffix a and the word jnana, which means not or lack of knowledge. And Prabhuji beautifully explains. Calling ignorance non-knowledge is like defining darkness as non-light. Like darkness, ignorance does not have its own existence, but is the absence of the light of wisdom. One can be well informed about the world. He can have a lot of information about different things. He can be a scientist or historian or physician, but if all his knowledge is only about the objective world, he will be considered ignorant because he doesn't know his true nature. And Prabhuji continued to quote from chapter 13 from the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly explains that jnana is discernment between kshetra, or the field, which is our peripheral aspect, and kshetrajna, or the knower of the field, which is the central core of our existence. O son of Bharata, know that I am the knower of the field in each and every field. I consider wisdom to be knowledge of both the field and the knower of the field. Kshetra is not only the physical body, but it's everything that we can perceive. Anything that we perceive as an object is the kshetra, the objective world. Kshetrajna is the subject or the observer of those objects. And Krishna, or pure subjectivity, is the one that dwells in each and every field as the knower of the field, or as pure consciousness. And wisdom is to recognize both, is to be able to realize both the field and the knower of the field, and to see Krishna, or consciousness, everywhere as the foundation of this reality. And this verse actually takes us from the field of knowledge, which we discussed in the first part of this meeting, to the realm of wisdom. And in order to get a deeper understanding of it, we should get a wider perspective of how Advaita Vedanta see the way that we perceive reality. And Prabhuji explained it beautifully in his book Advaita Vedanta. Life as it is perceived on the dual plane consists of two aspects, the objective and the subjective. Within the relative dimension of existence, there are only two levels, the objective world and the experiencer, or the subject, the observed and the observer, everything that can be perceived and the perceiver. Objects refer to what is observed, be it people, animals, or things. Subject refers to the I, or the observer. When we identify with an I, we believe that we reside in a body, and we as a subject use senses in order to perceive the world around us, to know the world, which we see as separated from us, the subject. And this is our life on the dual plane. We as separate beings residing in a body, coming in contact with the world, which is separate objects that meet and learn and know each other. But can the senses and the mind reveal to us the mystery of our own self? Those means meant for exploring the objective world, but not the subject, not the subjectivity. And Prabhuji in his book, Ishavasya Upanishad, explain why we're not able to use those means when we want to come in contact with the subjectivity itself. And I will read here his really beautiful words and explanation. The senses are unable to grasp it, not because of remoteness or distance, but because Atman is the source of them. Likewise, it is impossible to define the self with words, because its existence precedes vocabulary and even thought. The difficulty to understand the self through the senses lies in the lack of distance between the subject and its intrinsic reality. The other reason, and perhaps the main one, is that it is impossible to perceive consciousness as an object because it lacks objective attributes. In other words, it is not another object, nor that these belong to objective reality. It is subjectivity itself. Atman, the self, has no qualities or attributes, so how can we actually search for it? And Prabhuji continue and explain. Consciousness consists of an uninterrupted subjectivity that in its constant flow leaves no room for separation or the existence of the other. Atman is closer to us than we are to ourselves. Therefore, a quest for it does not involve a sensory apprehension of something. Its subjective nature demands a much more intimate and endearing cognition, more related to being than to knowing. Truth cannot refer to temporal objective experience. Therefore, it cannot be found through empirical investigation. In order to know it, it should be courted as a true lover. In the dual plane, we're used to search for things that are far away and try to possess things that we don't have and learn things that we don't know. But when it comes to the search for self-realization, all those efforts are useless because we are searching for something that is already here. We're looking for something that has no attributes, no qualities, and we want to know what is the unknowable. So it's just leave us with this question of, so how? And we always come to this question, yes, how? And Prabhuji in his lecture, This Perception is You, giving us a clue or like an opening to something that we already know. He raised the question if we exist. And then he points out that our existence is something that we never learn about. We never heard about it from anyone or never read it in a book. When we were newborns in the crib, we already knew that we exist. We didn't need anyone to tell us. It's before the language, before the concepts, before any idea that we had about ourselves. We knew that we exist. And as Prabhuji continue and explain in the lecture, we can doubt anything in the world, but we cannot doubt the existence of the doubter. So there is something that we always knew and that was always there and is still here, which is our existence. And existence, as we learned in our first meeting, in our previous meeting, in Sanskrit, sat is existence and it's also truth. And the truth is what was, is, and will be. And this is one of the characteristics of consciousness, the existence. And when we come in contact with this fundamental experience that I exist and I know that I exist, this is what Prabhuji is pointing out here, that we know of our existence. We don't need to learn it from anywhere. And this is where we can enter into the subjective realm of what we really are, without everything that was added to us later on by society, by people, by the senses, by the mind, this mountain of concepts and ideas and conclusions about everything, but without knowing who we are. And the saints are telling us, you are that, this existence is what we are. And before we conclude, I would like to share that this week it happened that Prabhuji was sitting with us, the monastic disciples, in the dining room. And he asked me what I'm going to talk about. And I told him about knowledge and wisdom. And he raised the question, what is the highest form of knowledge? And his answer was being, that being is the highest form of knowledge. And he brought the beautiful quote of Rabbi Yosef Albo, which said, Ilu yeda'ativ ha'itiv. If I would know him, I would be him or become him. In order to emphasize that to really know is to be, or to come in contact with wisdom, or the source of wisdom, the pure consciousness, is a state of being. To know is to become, not to be something new, something else, but to be what always was, but we didn't notice. And to conclude what we just spoke about, I would like to read a little bit of from Prabhuji Advaita Vedanta book. He dedicated a whole chapter there to knowledge and wisdom. And at the end, he's doing a comparison. I will not read all of it. It's very beautiful, and I highly recommend you to go and read it all. But I will read just a few sentences which kind of tie what we were discussing until now. Knowledge comes by learning from what we read and hear. It belongs to the mental domain. Wisdom comes from learning from what happens to us. It belongs to the realm of the spirit. Knowledge proceeds from other people. Wisdom always blossoms from and within one's own self. Knowledge originates from the external, from outside, from the surface. Wisdom is born in the depths of our existence. Knowledge touches the mind. Wisdom touches us. Knowledge changes our way of thinking. Wisdom leads us to a complete metamorphosis. So after we did this round and learned about Prabhuji's approach and how he explained the differences between knowledge and wisdom, I would like to get back to the original sentence from What Is As It Is and look at it in a different perspective after what we discussed. A lesson or conference is a meeting on a verbal or mental level, an encounter on the level of words, of the intellect. It's the meeting between a teacher and student in which study takes place. From a meeting of minds, only knowledge can ensue, but wisdom can never blossom, as it can only arise from Sangha. Satsang, as we learned in our first meeting, is association with the truth, or with an enlightened being. And with this association, we can come to the realization that in our search in the objective world, all our attention was directed outwards. and we forgot to pay attention to what and who we really are, and to what always was, is, and will be within ourselves, or what we really are. And Shabda Pramana, the reliable testimony of the scriptures and of the enlightened being, is considered the only pramana that can actually lead us towards self-realization, because the word of the Master and his teachings are meant not for accumulation of information, of ideas and concepts, but actually to awaken with us this realization that we are seeking something that always was always there, the essence of our being. And the Vedantic meditation called Nididhyasanam, the process of learning from the Master, from the spiritual Master, is recommended by Shravanam, which is listening, but not just hearing. Listening by after removing all our preconceived ideas and concepts and conclusions, and really being an open and white page, and then listen to the Master, and then to Mananam. Mananam means to contemplate, to digest, to assimilate the wisdom. And then Nididhyasanam is when we actually meditating on the wisdom and making it our own. And I want to end this meeting by listening to a few sentences by Prabhuji, which are from a lecture he gave about the Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, that speaks about the field and the knower of the field, the Kshetra and Kshetrajna. And he concluded the lecture with a few very deep sentences, which I want that we will practice exactly this. Listen to the words, try to digest them, to contemplate on them, try to listen completely open, without any judgment or without any preconceived ideas. Only listen. And then let these words resonate in you, contemplate on them, try to digest them, and then try to really go deep into meditation on these words. You can close your eyes or keep them open, but try to really be open.
Never forget, the experience doesn't matter, but the attention to that perceive the experience constantly, that really matter. Many activities in the field, mentally, physically, emotionally, doesn't matter, but the space where all of them take place. Pay attention and rest into it. Rest in it. Relax in it. Relax in it. It's not another experience. Not as another experience. Oh, now I will relax, and when I am relaxed, no. Recognize it. What? That space where every experience takes place. Even the experience of relaxation, etc. Even now, everything what I say, what you think, what you feel, It's an experience, and you feel beautiful things, ugly things, whatever you feel. Doesn't matter. But you're observed. Our thoughts, ideas, words, attitude, moods are observed. And that observe, that is nothing or not a thing, that is your real nature.
Thank you for joining us today. Jai Prabhuji.